All right, welcome back. I'm excited for this session. Brett, it's great to see you again. I hope you and the family are well there in Nebraska. And Lilia, nice meeting you. Nice to see you there in New York. You're leading people analytics at a small startup bank, is that right? No.
We're very small and very new.
Very new. No, actually, it's a very large, bank, Citibank. So, and I'll let you two introduce yourselves in more length than what you're going to be talking about. So, and then I'll come in towards the end, and we can have a chat with the audience. That sound good?
That sounds great, Al.
All right, enjoy.
All right. Well, Lilia, you kick us off here first.
Well, thank you very much for having us. My name is Lilia Hayrapetyan. I lead people analytics for Citibank. We are a very new 200-year-old bank, and we are working on some really exciting and in people data help us make people decisions, not only people decisions, but also decisions as well. And happy to be here and partner with you, Brett, on some of the interesting conversations we're going to have around how we're improving our.
That's great. I lost you there for a second, but I'll go ahead and jump in. So it's a pleasure to be with everyone and pleasure to connect here with Lilia, a great collaborator and partner in the people analytics space. I have the pleasure of leading some of our people analytics here at Perceptyx. At Perceptyx, we're an employee listening and people analytics platform. And the great thing is you get the technology, but then also the consulting aspect. So I love to collaborate with great clients and partners like Lilia to really help them rethink about the employee experience and listening at scale. So with that, we'll kind of dive in terms of our session today. And first, I just wanted to mention that we work with companies like Citibank and their leaders like Lilia to really create this high fidelity picture of the employee experience, looking at all these different moments that matter. And you've probably heard that the census survey is dead, but at least the clients that we work with, it couldn't be further from the truth. So still today, more than 90% of our clients leverage that census survey as a great way to get breadth in terms of measuring a variety of interesting business outcomes and decisions and how that's all impacting the employee experience. What we have seen though, and particularly during COVID-19, is organizations such as Citibank are leveraging all these other streams of data to really get a sense of that experience. So as an example, during COVID-19, we've partnered with over 100 enterprises, including Citi, and gathered more than 750 million data points to really help these companies see the way forward. So everything from corporate responses to COVID-19, how to manage the remote workforce, supporting people managers, the return to work, the list goes on and on. And one of my great colleagues here at Perceptyx, Dr. Sarah Johnson, I love this visual that she created. And I think where so many organizations get stuck is they think of these listening streams as silos. And what I've really appreciated working with Citibank, I think they're world-class in terms of cutting across all of these to really answer business questions and business problems. So for example, why are we losing early career technical talent? Or how can we plan for the return to work? And it's looking at all these streams of data, how they all interact to really get that full picture of the employee experience. It's not just looking at a silo, looking at a one-time event, but really connecting all of these dots. And we'll have a parking lot here because I think Lilia has so many stories that she could share in terms of understanding what really matters and just thinking of how cities use their entire employee listening framework to rethink HR and rethink things such as their employee benefits, to rethink its interaction with the customer experience, diversity, equity, inclusion, turnover, the list goes on and on. So Lilia, let me ask you, is there a story that you're itching to tell in terms of this wheel and where Citi's seeing great business results?
Thank you, Brett. In fact, I think for every piece of this wheel, there is a story, and it's goes to choose one to focus on. But I'll start with one that's near and dear to my heart, because I think that in everything that we do for our employees, it's also important for us to know what's the impact on our customers. So one of the most impactful examples for us has been the linkage that we've done looking at our employee data, employee sentiment, and how it affects our customer sentiment. So understanding what is the relationship there and what are the situation sentiment, what are the conditions that are allowing our employees to perform at their best, but also provide the best customer experience. So one of the analysis that we actually partnered with you on was to look at this specific question. We looked at our net promoter scores for our consumer bank and tried to understand in what conditions, in what groups were we seeing higher net promoter scores, and how was that associated with their employee listening results. So we not only looked at the census results, but we're now planning to look at also our pulse results throughout COVID that we were conducting with you guys. So as we were navigating this really difficult, different kind of a situation, as I'm sure everybody was also navigating this, understanding how our employees were coping with this and what kind of a customer service they were providing to our clients was an important connection point. What we found was that, interestingly, but also not surprisingly, that our employee net promoter scores were very much associated with our customer net promoter scores. Not surprising, right? It's very intuitive, but without the data, without the real analysis, difficult to pinpoint and prove and really show the value of having employee net promoter scores and working on getting those scores up as well. So that's just one example that I think is a really important one. It also shows how we connect the dots between our employees and our customers. Another one that was also an interesting partnership with you guys was looking at the effect of our leaders and the shadow they're cast across the organization. So understanding how our leaders' sentiment as expressed on the VOE has an effect on their organizations. So it was interesting to see. And again, not surprising, right? In many of these cases, the results are not surprising, and the hindsight is really 2020. But without the data, it would have been difficult to know for sure that, especially in certain areas, especially when it comes to innovation and the company direction, our leaders' views really have an impact on their organization's views. These are just a couple of examples that are coming first to mind. During our time navigating pandemic, one of the biggest issues that we saw that was near and dear to our hearts was also understanding how we can bring more diversity into the organization. That has been of utmost importance for Citi for a long time. The events of the recent months were just confirming what we had been doing all along, but also spurred a lot of interest and a lot of work around understanding what are the conditions that are allowing us to hire better, promote better, and retain better our talent, diverse talent, and really all talent, but especially focusing on our women globally and our diverse talent in the US. So that has been an important part of our work as well, and linkage to sentiment analysis, linkage to survey analysis has been crucial. One of the things that we have been doing is understanding how sentiment 2 to 3 years prior to individuals leaving has an effect on their likelihood to stay with us, but also leaving us. So the kind of analysis we've been doing is really linking looking at the sentiment of people who have left us 2 to 3 years prior to them leaving us. And that was the analysis that led us to understand that, in fact, women and men often leave us for different reasons. And in fact, especially for senior women and senior men leave us for different reasons. And for these, the findings were somewhat counterintuitive. Interestingly, we found that our men are more likely to leave us because of some of their discontent, discontent with their managers often, while women actually talk a lot about our company direction. And interestingly, the old saying that people join organizations but they leave their managers, that seems to be true for our managers, but not necessarily our male managers, but not necessarily for our women. So interestingly, a lot of this data, a lot of this analysis would not be possible if we did not do sentiment analysis, if we did not do surveys, if we did not gauge our employees' opinions about whether that be their everyday experience at Citi, but also as we go through difficult times like going through the pandemic, how they're adjusting, how are the policies or how are the ways that we are reacting to these events resonating with our employees, and what can we do better? Just to sum it all up.
Yeah, Lilia, I'm so shocked by all the work that you and the team's been able to accomplish in just a year, looking at all these different threads. But I'm curious, what's on the horizon? What do you hope to be adding to this wheel in terms of looking at how employee data connects to other business outcomes? What's next for you and that team?
So a lot of the work that we're doing now is taking the insights that we have been able to reach through our deep dive analysis throughout this year and really bring them to a place where they can be easily accessed by our HR and by our managers as they are needed. So we're really on a big journey of automation. We are utilizing any techniques that are available to us, putting things into dashboards, but not just dashboards that are just showing you a whole bunch of different data that may not necessarily come together, but really trying to drive insights and allow our HR as well as business partners to be able to make decisions based on data. So yeah, big automation push this year. That's
great. And that kind of leads me to maybe some of the next things to talk about. So when looking across the industry, and this is from latest research here in 2020 from Rotolo and colleagues, but I found it interesting. They asked, where are the pain points in the employee experience in the listening programs, employee surveys? And it's not, for example, the survey length or how frequently, but more and more often, more than half of these groups, these large organizations that aren't using Perceptyx are indicating action planning and that process. And in fact, that direction, like what Josh Burson talks about, the market is moving more towards action platforms, systems that hear what employees are saying and respond to problems in near real time. Just that shortening that time delay between knowing the results and acting on them. And Lily, I think that's exactly what you're touching on in terms of that future direction.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's exactly it. I think one of the platforms that we use, our managers use very extensively, our HR uses extensively, is the Perceptyx platform after our results go live. It's a platform that's heavily visited and used extensively by both HR and managers. And bringing the same kind of rigor to other areas of HR data is becoming as important as the survey piece.
Yeah, we spend so much time in action planning and not enough in action taking. And like you said, that system makes it pretty easy as what I say, 1, 2, 3, and really be able to act, not only listen, but act at scale. So being able to select that one issue that's going to have the biggest effect on that manager and his or her team, identifying a couple of things they can do about it, and then committing 3 times to talk about it. And with all of these organizations that we work with, hundreds of organizations, there's a lot of variability in usage. And Citi is great at this, but not every organization is great at acting at scale. And when we look at just patterns of usage of this application, this great tool available to everybody, one group is just asking. So they're haphazard, so to speak, in that active in the action planning tool. So these clients, half the time they're using it, half the time they're not, or when diving within an organization, some managers are using it, but it's not across the board. And when we look at 3 years of their historical data and engagement, only 8% saw improvements since that first year, and only a quarter of them are at or above their peer group in terms of how they compare on engagement. And then you take, by comparison, an organization like Citi, who takes more of that approach of a act, act, act. They're in the tool more than 70% of the time. So a lot of majority of managers are using this on a regular basis. And we're seeing that nearly 3/4 are seeing improvement in engagement since that first administration. And nearly 80% of these clients are at or above their above that peer group 50th percentile. So what are some lessons that you could share, Lilia, in terms of how do you act at scale? I feel like this is the biggest tripwire that gets in the way in terms of having listening programs that scale and are successful and sustainable. What's your advice in this regard?
We talk about embedding everything that we do, and first of all, understanding the results and talking about them. The 1, 2, 3 approach has actually really worked well for us. And I think it's important because it makes it all a lot more tangible. So often when we talk to our managers, we hear, well, there's so much, like, I don't know what to focus on. There is so much that's going on. I'm not sure that I should be focusing on this area or that area. And what's simple about this 1, 2, 3 that we've really brought into the organization is we ask them to just focus on one thing. Even if you focus on one thing now, that can term. And if you focus on that one thing, talk about it, at least decide to do two things about it, and then talk about it at least 3 times. That really makes a difference. And that's at the individual manager level. And when we talk about organizationally at the large scale, understanding what are the issues that are important for the majority of the people within the organization, and creating groups that are actually focusing on the action together, coming up with creative ways to address them. We have task force actually, even within HR, addressing issues that are important for our HR colleagues for VOE, and then talking about them and embedding that in our communications, really linking and labeling, as we say it. Every time we do something that is addressing that issue, we make sure that we label it as well. But action becomes important, and if we just not being overwhelmed by the amount of work that needs to be done and really focusing on 1 or 2 things, deciding what exactly that you're going to be doing about it, and then embedding it in communications and talking about it again and again has been, at least for us, the cornerstone of success.
Yeah, that's such great sage advice. I feel like a lot of the audience would want to pick your brain for hours. You've been there, done that, have the coffee mug to prove it, so to speak, in terms of this complicated space. Any other maybe kind of concluding thoughts, Lily, or advice that you'd give to people that are newer, either in terms of the employee listening, their employee listening framework, or the people analytics? Any lessons learned that you want to pass on to everybody?
Sure. So from lessons learned, I mean, there are a lot. And for many smaller organizations, employee listening is really where you start with your analytics. That's your beginning stages. This is your first piece of data that directly comes from your employees, and you should use that wisely. It should be part of everything that you do, and you should first and foremost use it for action planning, but then dive deeper to understand what are some of the other areas that you can gauge more insight into using this data, right? So even the example of attrition, for example, right? When we look at our attrition prediction, utilizing our employee data, you can say, okay, we have employee surveys at the end, we have employee interview tools when people are leaving us, we ask them why they leave us. Guess what? When we do the analysis and we look at the VOE predictors, VOE is our annual survey, our predictors of attrition versus what people tell us at the very end, we find drastic differences, because we all know about social desirability. Nobody wants to burn bridges when they're leaving the organization. You're not really getting the true reasons why people leave. But if you are able to link the data and use it in a way that is more predictive, it's going to open up more insights for you. So yeah, your employee sentiment data is really the starting point for any analytics you're going to do. Treat it with respect, treat it with utmost care. Confidentiality is super important. Everything that we do is at aggregate level. We never know whose data we're looking at. Everything is done at that very, very top aggregate level, and that is extremely important for our colleagues. Preserve their confidentiality, and that's really the cornerstone of their honesty with us as well. And I guess that's probably one of the most important aspects.
Yeah, certainly something in this world where you can start getting into that creepy factor in terms of knowing so much about employees. It's a big testament to you and the rest of the team in terms of that ethics and privacy and confidentiality and all those things that are the bedrock foundation of building trust with employees, so that they do share that employee voice and their perceptions, and it's honest. Because when it's not honest, it's garbage in, garbage out data, and all of a sudden it's no longer predictive and useful. So that's really good advice. I feel like now is about the time for Al to come back and join us. And I would just say, if anyone wants to learn more, of course, please connect with Lilia or myself on LinkedIn or Twitter. If you want to learn more about how we're helping other organizations like Citibank, please follow Perceptyx on LinkedIn or Twitter as well.
Yeah, thank you both. And Lilia, Brett said you got the coffee mug, then you held up this massive coffee mug. I'm like, oh yeah, you really did earn it. Hey, thank you. There's a bunch of insights and ideas there, and a few I'd like to highlight. And Lilia, you have a strategy background, and so I'm interested in asking you about the connection between people analytics and HR or talent strategy. What does that look like for you, there, and ability to get the insights and recommendations that you formulate into actual practice? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. In fact, I think a lot of the interestingly, we're a fairly new team at Citi. We're about a year and a couple of months old, and most of our initial work has been focused on talent strategy as well as diversity strategy. And it is important for us to understand what are the actions that are going to make the biggest impact and drive real change within the organization. And without data, without analytics, it's hard to just rely on your, some of the best practices that we've heard from IO psychologists for ages, right? Those are good, but then you start encountering new problems, new areas that there isn't as much research. And without really truly understanding what your data is telling you and how you can have an impact, what are the blind spots for your organization, where you can actually probably have to make some behavioral modifications. Without that, it's difficult to make a difference in talent and diversity space. So it's been a important part where we've brought in analytics to help us make better decisions, and especially as we're trying to move a needle when it comes to our diversity numbers.
Yeah, and well, thank you for sharing that. And again, there's a lot that we could get into, but in the interest of time, I want to turn it over to Brett real quick, because you and I have spoken about this before, in that there's immense value in using existing research, looking at leading practices and a variety of other things. However, to understand the system for which you're responsible at that point in time requires that we actually investigate certain dynamics, whether it be in the diversity, equity, inclusion area, well-being, engagement, performance. So my question to you, Brett, with COVID, you all as a firm put together research that helped your clients identify remote work strategies, what could be done to support them in this very abrupt change to remote work. So my pointed question to you is, can you speak to the need for unique data set, what I call appropriate data, to answer the questions leaders want or know? And that requires creativity. It's not just pulling something off the shelf and saying, okay, we check that box. It requires that we as researchers, as analysts, hey, this is possible, and we might have to create some things that don't currently exist. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, Al, that's a great point. And during these interesting times where it seemed like one curveball after the next, it was really an opportunity to to not just take something off the shelf that we've been there, done that, let's use this strategy or these sets of questions. It was far more strategic, and we started with business problems in mind and working with our clients, across our clients, understanding what's keeping them up at night, what are the problems that they're solving 5 feet in front of them, not 5 years out in front of them, right? But right now. Yeah. And really crafting that strategy so they could get the insights they need immediately. Mm-hmm. And then even to your earlier point and what Lilia said, I think it's so spot on. We often resort as a field and what we've been trained to go to the literature first and see what's been done. And there is a lot of value in that. But there's also a great value in seeing how it works here, because it's not always exactly the same. And even thinking of the analysis we did together at Citibank on how the employee experience drives the customer experience, we saw really interesting effects by tenure, which isn't captured by the literature necessarily. We saw really interesting effects, whether it's a customer-initiated contact or if it's a employee-initiated contact, and how that chain of events affects that relationship. So it's far more complicated. We all know that the employee experience has an impact on the customer experience, but where we really wanted to dive in and see what are those leading contributors, what are the levers we can pull or push? Does it work for everybody exactly the same? If not, why? So that we can have multiple strategies and not just one overarching. So that's what really excites me in working with someone like a rock star like Lilia and her team in terms of getting at those types of insights.
So Lilia, I'm going to ask you to comment on that before, but brace yourselves. Ready? Oh my gosh. So you didn't see that coming, did you? So it didn't hurt, did it? so I hadn't done that before. So Lilia, what do you think about the creativity that we have to employ as people analytics professionals, and not just rely on the existing data sets, but really be attentive to what is needed and create new data that would be more appropriate? Is that similar to the way you think about the challenge before us?
Yes. In fact, I think that it will be so difficult if we only relied on the data that's available to us. And honestly, I think we'll all be just doing the same analysis over and over again. If we all have more or less similar kind of data. I mean, nobody is coming up with crazy data that they collect on a regular basis. But it's really understanding what's data that's most pertinent to you at this moment, depending on what kind of journey you're on, and knowing how to collect that data, how to treat it, again, confidentially and with respect, but then how to utilize it for the best possible ways of making decisions. We're on a cultural transformation journey now. Do you think that we have all the data we need to know how to be successful? Most likely no, because as we're trying to do new things and think about our culture in a different way, we're doing experiments with behavior modification experiments, then we'll have to measure the impact of that. That's collection of new data. And only that way, with that feedback loop, with the measurement, constant measurements, we'll be able to actually be successful in whatever we design. So the collection of data is an important aspect of any analytics function, I think. Surveys make it easy and just a no-brainer, but they're not the only way. There are so many different ways to gauge the data and collect it, but also make good use of it.
Well, yeah, sticking with you, Lilia, and thank you, for sharing that. And speak, if you would, about the governance around this. So, having been a people analytics leader myself, I have to own up to my Yahoo-ness, where, with a research background, I just want more data. Just give me more data. I just, whatever. Obviously, the world has advanced over the past 15, 20 years to where there's better governance, there's better, gateways to determine the adverse impact and appropriateness of collecting data or doing a certain analyses. So what does governance look like to you? So who are some of your partners who are helping make these decisions? Are they functional leads within HR? Are they business partners? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Data privacy is so near and dear to my heart. Anybody who knows me personally knows that I am a very big believer in data privacy and ethical use of personal data just in general. And at Citi, we are especially respectful of that. So our governance structure is evolving, but it definitely involves our data and from HR control and compliance. Our information security partners are extremely important for us, because it's not just about what data you can and cannot have access to, but what data can you safely and securely also store? How do you store it? How do you transition it from one system to another? If you use it in one system, can you actually, then are you subjecting it to a higher risk of being in breach? So it becomes a very, very hot topic. It's definitely a hot topic for us. And Brett knows very well, when we were going through the adjustments for GDPR, that was a very expensive undertaking for us. Not only employment lawyers, not only compliance officers, not only information security people, but also functional leads. And just really at the end of the day, we have to think about what is our promise to our employees. Even if the data is not sensitive, if we have made a promise to our employees to keep it confidential, it should be treated that way. And that's of utmost importance for us. And very quickly, but it's I think it's one of the most important subject areas for me, and it's one thing that I can talk about actually for hours.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for your passion. And that very much aligns with our promotion of people data for good, which is really the promotion of the ethical and responsible use of people data and analytics for the benefit of the individuals in the organization as well as the organization itself. So, thank you for your commitment to that. Brett, as we start to, wrap up, what, lies ahead for you? Obviously, the world has, it's crazy, but it's also the case where the vaccine is becoming more widely distributed. There's organizations who are talking about coming back to the workplace. It's kind of, at least from my vantage point, all over the map. Some want to go back as it was. Some are like, okay, 3 days a week. Others are 4 days a week. It's so where are you focusing your energy, and where are you guiding or seeing your customers go in terms of their priorities right now?
Yeah, it's very much varied. I think everyone is, at least from our research, we all thought the vaccines was this great hope, the glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, and yet there's still quite a bit of resistance. And from our research, we found organizations can do a lot to encourage employees to get vaccinated or provide small incentives to increase that likelihood. The focus of this year is rethinking it all in general, from initial attraction and candidate experience to onboarding to ultimately exit, and thinking about what have we learned over this last year, and playing this game of employee listening and analytics, like I akin to playing the game Marco Polo. So where, you say Marco, someone else says Polo, and you play this dance of trying to get closer to the topic. And it's the importance of keeping to ask those questions. You're going to get closer to hitting those business objectives that you want. So asking the right way, asking frequently, and seeing how you need to maybe change a strategy based on that feedback. And like I said, I think Citi's been a great exemplar in terms of living that and changing how they've done quite a few things this year. And what I love about it, it's set up for research success too. So the changes they've made, we're going to be able to collaborate together and see what is it led to the desirable impact. And if not, maybe we need to tweak something in that system through that game of Marco Polo. So
so what I'm hearing is continuous learning, continuous conversation, and that obviously is based on the trust and credibility that you've built up there at Citibank, Lilia. So hey, thank you so much, both of you, for contributing. Closing thoughts, and how can people get in touch with you? Lilia, you want to take that first?
Sure. Happy to get in touch. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the easiest way to find me. Brett?
Yeah, you can connect with me, Brett Wells, at LinkedIn, or bwells@perceptyx.com. Love to continue the conversation and hear what's working for everybody, and if there's any ways that we can help.
Well, thanks to you both again. Yeah, be well and stay safe. And yeah, hope to see you in person sometime soon. Hopefully not too long.
Absolutely.
All right.
Sounds great.
Bye.